You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Get on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler, and with me as always, I have my good friend and co-host, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, how you doing, man? 2 wins in a row. Got to be excited.
We're going streaky. Nah, man, I'm doing pretty darn well. It was awesome to see the Broncos get another victory this weekend and get the home shutout. I mean, 16-0. You hope the offense will turn it around here with the Chiefs game coming up. But man, hard to complain with a dominating game like that. And my gosh, I know that Flacco didn't have a good game, but thank God Marcus Mariota isn't the Broncos quarterback.
That was pretty bad. I mean, there was, like, our defense played a good game, but there was a lot of plays that were there to be had by even an average quarterback, and he definitely missed them. So it's great for what our defense did. I mean, they deserve all the credit for sure, but there is some of it of just the quarterback they were playing, and I just think that really the Titans, I mean, they've been held back. We talked about it on the podcast. They've been held back by Mariota, even though his stats weren't that bad, but he's still just a pretty bad quarterback. So I think they're actually going to be a better team now with their change at quarterback, which I think is going to happen. I haven't heard officially, but I'm betting it does happen.
Yeah, but Tannehill wasn't that much better either. I mean, he was moving the ball 13 for 16 for 144 yards, but he took 4 sacks for 35 yards. Granted, playing a little bit more aggressive catch up there. But yeah, right. It was incredible ineptitude for that Titans defense. And I know that I'm personally excited. The Broncos defense seems to be like it's turning around, but let's not mistake it, because we saw the Chargers last night look pretty damn bad against a bad Steelers team. And then the Titans are wolf as well. So we will know a lot more about this Broncos team after this Thursday night game. Right.
If the offense continues to sputter against the Chiefs, then there's room for concern.
Yep.
But, I mean, right now, when we're talking about points allowed per game, Bears are 3rd, Titans are 5th, Packers are 8th, Chargers are 10th, and Jaguars are 12th. Yeah. So that's 5 of the 6 games that they've played against some pretty darn good defenses. And so, I mean, again, we have to kind of keep things in perspective, where the defense looked great, but they were also playing a terrible offense. The offense looked terrible, but they were playing against a great defense. So it's just kind of that was why the over-under was plus 39.
Yeah.
and they didn't even get close to that.
We pounded the under on that one.
Yeah. But, so yeah, it's promising. It's great. 2-0 in October. Chiefs are 0-2. That's always a nice thing to be able to say. I live in where I'm surrounded by Chiefs fans, so it's been misery for them, great for me. I've loved texting all my Chiefs fans, and I just hope that they can continue, because, man, I'm going to get it back big time if the Chiefs win this one.
Yeah. No, it'll be an interesting one, but, man, talk about game of the year. Everybody was in the world to suck, 0-4, but back-to-back wins, and now a game that is going to define the season. I mean, let's call it as it is. If the Broncos can hit and get a victory against what looks like a wounded Chiefs team, this team has everything to play for. And I know, I mean, you and I calling them dead 0-4, but looking at the landscape of the AFC, it might be hard to get that 5th seed in the wild card, because the Bills have an easy-ish schedule and they're playing great football. But that 6th seed, I mean, Colts/Texans, AFC North, I mean, the Browns don't look great. I'm not picking the Bengals, obviously, Steelers, so it might be the Raiders. So the Broncos are in there. They got a chance for the playoffs, but it starts by winning this week in Kansas City, and that'll be the telltale. I mean, if they can win that game, it's in front of them. But if not, it's probably a season of just scraping your head but not getting in the playoffs.
Right, exactly. I mean, we've always talked that this was going to be a transition year. Maybe it could be a little bit more. We'll see. But I don't know. That's what we're going to talk about here today. We're going to look at this past game and look ahead. So make sure also that you're following us on Twitter, because we're going to have some great thoughts on this upcoming game. You can find me at Carl Dumler MHH, and of course Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. And you can find the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. And make sure you subscribe to our show and leave us a rating, as we value your input. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, and even that of YouTube. Also, make sure you head on over to milehighhuddle.com, a new affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Also know that this podcast is powered by Overtime Media.
Also, before we get going any further, I want to give a shout out to friends of the podcast, friends of myself, in Paul and Noel, for reaching out to me on Twitter and hitting up that wedding registry. Man, I just really appreciate it, you guys, and, you deserve the shout out. You guys are both incredible listeners, so really appreciate it, guys.
Don't look now, Broncos country, but your team is on a 2-game winning streak after starting off this season 0-4. If you've missed out on any of the fun, there's still plenty of time to get in on the action with MyBookie. Of course, the Broncos-Titans game was phenomenal, but next week on a short week, the Broncos have the Chiefs. How about an in-game wager and player props for that game? You still think the division's in play? Well, go get some great odds on that too. And that just scratches the surface. We have teamed up with MyBookie this October to give you this great offer. Sign up at mybookie.ag and use promo code OVERTIME, and they will match your first deposit. Again, promo code OVERTIME, and new users get their first deposit doubled. mybookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Well, with the shortened week, we're kind of in a weird pickle here with our podcast. Just because we like to do the stock up, stock down, and kind of look at the past game, but then also have an episode where we look ahead to our upcoming opponent. But with Thursday game, we're actually going to kind of combine both episodes into this one. And Nick and I both can get long-winded. I promise you we are going to try our hardest not to make this a 2-hour episode. I mean, we'll kind of see what happens with that. But no, we'll keep it a little bit shorter. But no, we just want to be able to get as much in here as we can, because there's so much to talk about with the Broncos. I mean, obviously, riding that 2-game win, plenty to be excited about. Huge opponent on Thursday that could really, like you said earlier, define the season and be that huge turning point for this team, because, I mean, one stat that sticks out, Broncos haven't beat the Chiefs since Manning retired. Not good. And so this would be kind of getting that elephant off your back, or however the saying goes. And so big time game, but let's talk about the stock report for this past game against the Titans, and just kind of look at, and I love the fact that we didn't have completely all defensive players for the stock up and offensive players for the stock down. We got a little bit of a mix and match here, but no, I'll start with my first one here, and I'm going to go with Garett Bolles. And that might be a name that shocks some people, but honestly, really, the last 3 weeks, wouldn't you agree he's been our second best offensive line player behind Reisner?
He's probably right there with McGovern for me, but since he doesn't have to worry about the snapping of the football, probably I would not fight you in that claim at all. He's playing better football, and he did have a hold in this game, but it was declined, and overall, pretty solid game. So, and the Chiefs, I mean, not a great defensive front, so this might be, he might have springboarded himself forward. Like we've talked about on here many a times, question's never been the talent. Dude is athletically gifted. He has the tools to be successful. But, in the NFL, there's a lot of talented guys that don't work out. You got to put in the work. You got to be getting in those extra reps in the weight room, in the film room, talking with coaches, and maybe that booing from the home crowd after that Week 2 game, that bust of a Week 2 game for him, turning things around. That might be a defining moment for not only his season, but maybe even his career.
Definitely. I mean, like you said, there's not much that separates the average player from the bad players in the NFL. I mean, there's quite a bit that separates the greats, the elite. I mean, they're the type that have not only the amazing talent, but also have the drive to be great. But beyond them, it is actually pretty bunched up together. And so I think Brandon Thorne was talking about that earlier this week, that the more he watches football, I think he said something like, on a scale of 1 to 7, 80% of players fall within that 3 to 5 scale. 10% within the 6 to 7 and 10% in that 1 to 2. And so I think that's really accurate. And I think, again, like you said, with Bolles, it's never been a question of athleticism. It's always been a question of the drive and a little bit of an intelligence thing of just, there's a football intelligence to be able to understand what's going on the field. And there was one play on this game that I really was disappointed in what he brought to the field. It was a pass rush. I think they brought a slot corner blitz, and he and Reisner both blocked to the inside, took on the same guy, and left a complete unblocked player coming right at Flacco, where that should have been Bolles' guy. That should have been one that he recognized. It was pretty obvious on the film the guy was coming on the blitz, and instead of getting out there, kicking that guy out, allowing for a really big opportunity, when you can block up a blitz, it leaves a lot of those one-on-one opportunities. He missed it. But other than that, his run blocking hasn't been great, but it hasn't been terrible either. And so, again, I mean, it's just where he was a few weeks ago, where there was a lot of people talking, should he be blitzed? Or should he be blitzed? Of course he should be blitzed. Should he be benched? The question now is, what do they do on the right side more so than what they do on the left side? And so, like I said, I appreciate what he's doing. Appreciate that he's showing some signs of improvement. When he's pass blocking, he's doing a better job of getting into his kick step. He's doing a better job of not trying to, I guess what I would call finish guys off. A lot of his holding
the ground.
Right. That's been one of his big issues, is just he gets almost too aggressive sometimes, especially when he gets beat. And so then he just makes it completely obvious that he lost. And so he's not doing that as much. So I'm interested to see what he can do moving forward, but he'll be a big piece, especially in this game, because he's going to be going against Frank Clark. Now, the Chiefs' defense isn't bad, is terrible, but Frank Clark is that guy that they paid big money for. He's not having a great season, but he's not terrible either. He's one of those guys that could just explode on the scene in one game. So big matchup for Garett Bolles. Very excited to see how he does in that matchup. But who's your first stock up?
And I just want to say, get well soon, Juwan James. We need you. I think if they can, even if Juwan James just plays at an average level, I'm not expecting him to be a world beater week one when he comes back. There'll be a little bit of rust, but Wilkinson is the weak link on this line right now. And Leary is probably the next guy there. But if they can get even solid play from that right tackle spot, I think you can see this offense open up a lot more, especially in the pass game. So for me, stock up this week. I cheated on this one. I'm sorry, but I'm going to go with both off-ball linebackers. And, again, we need to scope this in frame of the Titans. This is a team that's playing phone booth football right now as far as the new age kind of thinking and philosophy of spreading teams out and making big guys cover. Titans are playing phone booth football. Everything's really compact, and Davis and Johnson are perfect for that, but they both answered the call this week. I mean, for AJ Johnson, or Alexander, whatever he's going by, Dino Johnson, sure, whatever. 9 total tackles, 6 solo tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 1.5 tackles for loss. And Todd Davis also playing his best game of the year. He had a lot of good plays in this one. 7 tackles, 6 solo tackles as well, so good rate there. And 0.5 tackles for loss. And I thought both those linebackers, they're out there playing great. And I want to bring it back to, besides Todd Davis having, I think, his best game of the year, I want to bring it back to specifically Alexander Johnson. I really did like that. I had concerns with him coming into this game and the season that, is he going to be more than a 2-down linebacker? He's a guy that when he can kind of turns like a battleship, so to speak, not the most fleet of foot, but, big guy, 250, 255 pounds. And typically that kind of guy is a 2-down linebacker, a box thumper that can be a liability in pass coverage. So what are the Broncos doing instead? Obviously there's some concerns there. They're sending him as pressure. They're sending him on delayed blitzes, and given his strength and his size, he's making it work. So I'm really liking that ingenuity. And on top of that, for AJ Johnson, the energy he's bringing, I think that's something this team has been sorely lacking. There hasn't been much chirping up there, and call the Dino dance dumb or silly, whatever. The players love it. That's what it's about for me, and the energy he's bringing. It's night and day difference. So even if he isn't, that true speed 3-down linebacker, the 5-tool linebacker, so to speak, as far as zone coverage, man coverage, blitzing, tackle between the box, or tackles in pursuit, that's okay because I think his total package, along with Davis there, they can get by. But it's going to be a real test this week. You know, like I said, we're playing a team in the Titans that like to do phone booth last week and that win. The Chiefs play a really, really high rate of 11 personnel, so those guys are going to be in space. And Travis Kelce, he's no George Kittle, but he's one of the best, so definitely looking forward to that matchup.
No George Kittle.
Yeah, no. I mean, who is?
That's true. That's very true. Did you hear Alexander Johnson's dyno call today?
It sounded like a wounded animal, in my opinion. It did. Yeah, that's it's like the baby one or something. I don't know. I know. You do you, AJ. I don't care. I'm not gonna complain too loudly with a 6'2", 255-pound dudes with those dreads. I mean, it's just whatever you say it is what it is, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, I agree, man. And that's one of the great things that I think that the Broncos are showing this year is a coach that understands a player's strengths and understands a player's weaknesses. I mean, Bill Belichick puts it the best. Don't look what a player can't do. Look what a player can do, and then make them and play them that way. And they've been doing that with AJ Johnson, getting him close to the line of scrimmage, having him come downhill, and not asking him to do a ton in coverage. And I mean, I'll be interested to see how the Broncos line up because, like you said, the Chiefs like to spread teams out. They want to get space. They want to get their players one-on-one. And so are they going to leave Todd Davis and Johnson into the game at the same time, or are they going to go that smaller package? I'm just going to see. I don't know. It'll be interesting just to see what they do here. And I mean, because both those guys are showing much better. I know somebody asked earlier this week whether Josie Jewell should be playing next to Alexander Johnson. One, Todd Davis is the voice on the field. He's been that for the last few years for the Broncos. And I do think that he has been one of the most underrated players on this team. I mean, we've talked about that on this podcast quite a bit. And he's better in coverage than people give him credit for. There's been quite a few times over the last couple games that I've seen him make great plays in coverage. And Johnson, while he's done okay, I mean, he had his interception. He had another opportunity for an interception. There's been times where he has not been perfect in position on coverage and has gotten away with a couple things. And so I think Todd Davis is a guy you still have to keep on the field. I think he's getting better every week that he plays, gets away from that injury. And so I really hope that he is the guy that gets getting the most snaps there on defense. But no, great game by both them and just a perfect setup to stop that run defense or to stop that run game by the Titans and really force the ball into a much worse player in Mariota. But now let's switch gears here a little bit and let's look at our I guess, stock down. And I mean, you've already mentioned his name once for me, Ronald Leary. Holding calls, false starts, missed assignments. They just seem to show up every single week. I think I heard that he has passed Bolles for most penalties on the team.
Yes, he has. I think that was even before last week.
And it might have been, but I mean, he's just every week you can expect that he's going to get those 2-3 calls a game. And I mean, part of me has this big question of when Juwan James comes back, is it Wilkinson that you're benching or is it Leary?
It's probably Wilkinson. Now, if Leary continues to struggle, then we could have this conversation down the road. But I think you probably stick with the veteran there.
And then my other question is part of Leary's struggle because of Wilkinson? I mean, whenever you have a weaker player next to you, and he's probably got the two weakest players beyond himself on the offensive line next to him, McGovern and Wilkinson. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me to see Leary actually show vast improvement once James comes back.
Yeah. I mean, I think once you see James come back, it should just have a synergistic effect on the entire line, whether it be passing offense, I mean, the usage of the tight ends, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think that's too much of a stretch, but, you know, we're operating in hypotheticals there.
Right. So, but anyway, he's on my stock down. Just not a great game for him by any means. The teams definitely seem to be picking on him where they're bringing the blitzes, and he's just not, ever since these injuries have set in, he's just a shell of himself for sure.
Yeah. Unfortunately, but luckily for the Broncos, if he continues to struggle, they can move on from him and create $8.5 million in cap room, which is a significant chunk of change. So worth noting as well. And maybe he'll turn it around. I mean, and there's some of those run plays where he really does do a good job. So worth calling out. Offensive line stock down here for me. Connor McGovern, I think he's been playing actually pretty well at center, but you got to call out the snap stuff. You know, he had the bad snap there. It almost resulted in a safety, which would have blown the shutout there. And how ironic would it be if the offense was the only reason the Titans scored against the Broncos this week. But McGovern, I mean, I don't want to waste too much time. I think he has been playing better, but back-to-back weeks now with some concerning shotgun snaps. So it's something to mention. And as far as a guy who we just saw the Broncos pay Andy Janovich in season, give an extension, Connor McGovern's another guy that could be on the table. But if he's snapping like that, they might wait and see. So I think he's playing decent. He's far from the issue on the offense, but either way, I think stock down for Connor McGovern this week with the inconsistent snaps now in back-to-back weeks.
Good choice. All right, well, let's get back to the positive here. And we both have defensive linemen. This was an absolute clinic on how a defensive line should look.
Yeah.
And we had questions coming in this season of what the Broncos were going to do because, I mean, you're going from the Chicago Bears, where they had two great interior defensive linemen, really three, that could get pressure, that could stop the run, and coming to the Broncos, there was some question of how these guys were going to do it. And so then, and there was some struggles in those first few games. I mean, let's call a spade here. But the Broncos have started figuring some things out. And my guy, I mean, I just wrote an article on him, did a film piece on him. And part of me was going, man, I should probably do another one because he just had an even better game. And that's Mike Purcell. I mean, him at nose tackle has just been such a difference maker. And it's not just that he's being able to hold up and double teams and help other guys go make plays. He had 2 tackles for loss in this game. And he's just showing an incredible understanding of what the offense is trying to do. He understands leverage. He understands hand placement. He understands technique of how to throw a defender off at the right time to go make the play. He has great awareness of where the ball carrier's at.
He sees the field well. That's
he does.
A big thing.
He really does. And so, I mean, he had 5 tackles in this game from the nose tackle spot. And really, I mean, you look at his snap counts, it's not like he's on the field a ton, but he's making the snaps he's on the field count. And he's getting teams behind the 8 ball when it comes to down and distance. And so this guy just has made such a huge difference. Love what he's doing on the field. And it's making me feel so much better about this defensive line. Even if we lose Wolf, even if we lose Harris, even if we lose Gotsis. I mean, we were kind of talking about that. What are they going to do on the defensive line? Well, other guys have really stepped up. The younger guys have really stepped up and made all the difference. And while I still think it's a position that's going to be targeted in the draft and free agency, it might not be as big of a concern as it was, say, 3 weeks ago.
And shout out to Draymond Jones as well, who isn't making the impact like Walker right now, but as a rookie, there's some flashes there from big number 93. So excited to watch him continue to grow. He's been impressive. Stock up for me. I'm going to cheat again. I'm going to go back-to-back players here. Same unit, though. First one I got to call out, Derek Wolfe, a guy that, for a couple of years now we've been saying, hey, kind of trending down, can really hold up at the point of attack pretty well. But what's he bringing as that extra pass rusher? He's doing the big stuff as far as getting after the passer and making some tackles for loss. He showed that this week, 2 tackles for loss, 3 solo tackles, and 2 sacks. From a guy who's playing not only in sub-rushing situations, but in base as well. So he has to do his gap integrity stuff, eating up blockers, also while getting after the quarterback. So that's impressive. And then a guy that you and I both have been lower on. Let's be honest here. He's not playing in base package for a reason, but because the Broncos are winning on first and second down at a higher regularity, this is allowing DeMarcus Walker to shine. He's being placed at 3 technique. He's able to rush after the passer, and that closing speed that he has, well, if he can use that swim move and discard that offensive lineman and get an angle to the quarterback, that closing speed he has is making a difference. So DeMarcus Walker, 4 tackles, 3 solo tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks as well this week. Stock way up for the young second-round pick, third-year player, just taking 51 overall, a guy that I've been a big critic of, and I still do wonder if he is a total 3-down defensive lineman. But, again, like you mentioned it earlier, how does this player win? He's being put in a position to win, and he's making the most of it right now. So stock up for both the old vet, Derek Wolfe, as well as the young gun, DeMarcus Walker.
Well, and it's just so great to see, like, most teams are going to focus, of course, on Von Miller.
Yeah.
With Bradley Chubb out, teams are always going to double team Von Miller almost entirely through the game. And they're daring any other player to beat them. And so guys like Mike Purcell, Derek Wolfe, Shelby Harris had a pretty decent game. He made a few flash plays in this one. Like I said, DeMarcus Walker, Jones, all these guys they're winning their one-on-one battles. And that's what the Broncos have to continue to do to win these games. Because like I said, they're giving them these opportunities. In the last couple games, Broncos have been winning those matchups.
Yeah, absolutely. And, DeMarcus Walker, that's, about as big of a turnaround as we've seen this season. Obviously Cortland Sutton getting that big second year jump, which, not to be totally unexpected, but Walker providing what he does as an interior pass rusher, especially with, Bradley Chubb being taken out, it's been huge for this defense. And it's one of the things that we're going to have to watch going forward. And man, they need him next week, probably more than they've needed him ever in his career. So hopefully that'll continue.
All right. Well, stock down, our last one here for the stock down. I'm going to go Joe Flacco. Definitely, I would put this as his worst game as a Bronco, wouldn't you?
It's up there. I don't know. That Raiders game, especially before it went into kind of garbage time where he was able to pick up a lot of stats, was pretty rough. That's
true. I guess this game sticks out just because there was some really big plays to be had.
Yeah.
And Joe Flacco missed them. And so I think about that third down when they were pushed back on their goal line, and Cortland Sutton comes open and he misses it. Now, I do question a little bit on that play. Was it Cortland Sutton was supposed to go outside and he went inside? Or is it Flacco just missed the pass that bad? I do wonder a little bit on that one. But there's other ones, such as the second and short, where he has all the field in front of him to go run for a first down. Instead, kind of rifles one right at the head of Emmanuel Sanders and ends up where they have to punt on that drive because they can't pick up the first down. And so just some decisions like that you're just going, what are you doing, buddy? And some throws that are just inaccurate, and some plays where even when the offensive line blocks well, he still continues to throw off his back foot. Now, I think maybe some of that is just a little bit of he's felt so much pressure all year long that maybe he's getting a little bit skittish. But like you said earlier of DeMarcus Walker needing to have a big game against the Chiefs, Joe Flacco has to have a big game against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
You can't score 16 points and expect that your defense is going to hold up against such a high-powered offense like the Chiefs and hold them to less than 16 points. And, I know they're going to lean against the run game, and we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But still, Joe Flacco has to go make a few plays to keep that Chiefs defense honest. And just, I don't know. It was very frustrating for this game because I just felt like he was really holding this team back. And a game that, well, yes, they still won the game. They could have done more.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Stock down for me. Talked about him again. We need to be hauling a little bit of ass in this episode still. So Elijah Wilkinson, playing tackle, he's holding up there. Not just absolutely totally incompetent, but folks, it really looks like Louis Vasquez playing from right guard to right tackle in a pinch and just not belonging. Not the athlete, doesn't possess the length. I don't know if he has it there, folks. So I'm gonna say stock down again for him, counting down the days until Juwan James can get back. Even though I know that Juwan James can be pretty inconsistent, I think that right now is hampering this offense a decent chunk. And to go with Flacco, as well as you said, I think those two right now are the main two culprits of limiting this offense. And I don't think probably not going to get an upgrade to Flacco this season, as far as specifically how this season goes. But Wilkinson, James around the corner, stock down twofold because of that.
All right, well, let's get to our final stock up here. And we decided to go with the safeties, Kareem Jackson and Justin Simmons. These guys just seem to be getting better with each week. And my guy was Kareem Jackson. And I just think about his ability to, he's such a great tackler.
Yeah.
For being a small guy, he just has no fear to go in there and make a tackle against a guy that maybe has 50 pounds on him. And the guy's just flying around. He's great in coverage. And I heard somebody talking about it earlier this week about how usually when you see a cornerback move to safety, you see him move to free safety. Rarely do you see them move to strong safety. But Kareem Jackson is just perfect for that. He can play along the line of scrimmage. He can drop back in coverage. He can play man coverage, whatever you need him to do. And they're going to need him big time this week to be a great man coverage because he's going to have some tough matchups. But I've loved his game. He's been by far the best signing the Broncos have made this offseason. I mean, I don't think it's even close. I mean, most of the other guys have been on the injury list. So, I mean, I don't think there's much of an argument there. But even if they were playing, it would be hard for them to match what Kareem Jackson is bringing to the table.
Yeah, don't disagree with you. And then my final stock up, Justin Simmons, the other part of that safety duo, getting his second pick another week in a row. And this defense as a whole, the tackling's showing up, but also the big plays in the pass game haven't been coming. So that's a big thing. You know, the Broncos are doing a really good job. Every single week their opponents, or the last 2 weeks, their opponents' yards per play have been pretty far down. So limiting the big play, which is absolutely huge in today's NFL, making them earn it, and, you know, against two not great offenses. So we'll see what's real or not this week against the Chiefs. But Simmons is worth being touted here. He's been playing better ball, I feel like, every single week. And, you know, not the enforcer that Jackson is, but the turnovers are coming, the plays in coverage are coming, and I don't know, the arrow's definitely trending up with both those safeties there for me.
All right, and I want to give one last shout out here, just because a lot of times kickers don't get mentions, but Brandon McManus making his first 50-yard field goal of the last 8 attempts. I mean, that was big to get that monkey off his back, but I mean, he just really, Broncos could have won the game just with Brandon McManus in this defense. But he was accurate. And I mean, 3 for 3, pretty much every one of them was right down the middle. And so just great to see him getting some of that confidence back that I think he was really lacking earlier in the year, because especially against some of these tougher teams, you can't have those missed points. I mean, that 3 points can make a bit. I mean, we've seen it already. Bears and why am I spacing? The
Jags.
The Jaguars. Yeah. Both those games come down to just a few points. So good to see him back on track, and great to see this team 2-0.
Absolutely. All right, well, we better take a quick break here. We'll be right back, folks, for the Scouts Eye Preview. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All righty, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. I am Nick Kendell, along with Carl Dumler, and now it's time to get into the big matchup. The Broncos host the Kansas City Chiefs Thursday night. Chiefs losers of 2 games in a row. Broncos winners of 2 games in a row. 2 teams that seem to be heading in different directions, but obviously the Chiefs still extremely talented, still AFC Super Bowl contenders, and the Broncos still kind of figuring themselves out. So we'll see. Vegas has the Chiefs currently as a 3.5-point favorite. That's changed from 4.5 points yesterday. And actually, the first injury report just came out for the Broncos and the Chiefs. Bryce Callahan did not participate. I'd be shocked to see him. But some good news for the Broncos. Will Parks pops up with a wrist injury. He's a full participant, though. Derek Wolfe with a hip limited. He'll probably play. Emmanuel Sanders knee. He will probably play. Mike Purcell knee limited. He'll probably play. Ron Leary with a shoulder limited, but he will probably play. Shelby Harris with a rib injury will probably play. And Duke Dawson, talking with Albright today, it sounds like Duke Dawson with a foot injury should be ready to play this week. The big one is going to be Jawan James with that knee injury, if he can go or not. So worth noting there. But the Chiefs are very injured. Eric Fisher with a groin injury, Kendall Fuller with a thumb injury, Chris Jones with a groin injury, and Andrew Wiley, guard, with an ankle injury, all did not participate. So I don't know if any of those guys are going to go. Maybe Kendall Fuller, but we'll see. I don't expect Eric Fisher or Chris Jones. The backup left tackle, Cameron Irving, who struggled this week, groin injury, he's limited. Anthony Hitchens with a groin injury, he's limited. Derek Nottie with an elbow injury is limited. Dorian O'Daniel with a hamstring injury limited, and Sammy Watkins still with a hamstring injury limited. So the short week, these early indications of the injury report might play out a little bit more than you'd think. And then on the injury report, but listed as full, Duvernay Tardif, ankle injury, the right guard, going up against Derek Wolfe this week, full participant. Tyreek Hill, shoulder injury, full. Anthony Sherman, shoulder injury, full, and Patrick Mahomes on here with an ankle injury, but still a full participant. So pretty banged up Chiefs team, and losing the couple, maybe Chris Jones, obviously a huge loss, but Kendall Fuller as well, Eric Fisher, that could be big for the Broncos. So worth noting here, we are recording this on Monday, so things will change, but definitely worth noting.
Yeah, Chris Jones, I mean, there's not many defenders that can do what he does. And when teams can really, I mean, he's great against the run, great against the pass. And when they can't get that interior pass rush going and teams can really focus on taking out Frank Clark. I mean, we'll talk about this more when we get into our breakdown of the game and how we would take them on, put on our coach's hat and all that. But the Chiefs definitely have some significant injuries, and that Fisher injury at left tackle keeps showing up more and more, especially with that left ankle of Mahomes being the one that's hurt. There's been a lot of times where players have been able to drive right into Mahomes from that side. And like I said, then also there at the guard spot, they should have some opportunities in this game. They should be able to get after Mahomes. And, I mean, that's going to play a huge role in whether the Broncos can win this one or not.
Yeah, nope, you are correct. So I keep drawing the short end of the stick here, Carl. I feel like you're kind of putting me on blast because I keep getting the worst matchup every week. But last week I had the Broncos offense against the Tennessee Titans defense. This week I have the Broncos defense against the Chiefs offense. So how am I going to do this besides a fair amount of praying and Hail Marys before bed, that kind of thing? Well, number one, and I'm not saying dirty by any means at all, but let's call it as it is. Patrick Mahomes is hobbled, so any chance that you have to hit him, take it. If Andy Reid is going to be ballsy enough to be calling RPOs or play actions, but keep the ball in, Patrick Mahomes' hands for a kind of a shovel pass or anything like that, a delayed draw, you hit Mahomes. I'm not saying go for that ankle, but you hit him. The offensive line for the Chiefs has been struggling. They're not running the ball very well. There's a lot of leakage as far as pass rush. So any chance you can to hit Mahomes, you do it. Don't get a penalty. Don't go for his ankle. I'm not saying that, but you need to let him know that you're coming. You need to hit him repeatedly because he's starting to show a little bit of frustration, I guess is the word to use, self-doubt in a way, because that ankle is limiting him and he's getting hit more and more. So these Texans and the Colts the last 2 weeks, not great pass rushes. I mean, solid, but not great, and they're getting after him. So make him feel it. Make him know that the defense is coming. At the same time, though, I think it's really important to keep Mahomes in the pocket. Yes, I know he's hobbled, but he's still really dangerous, and his field vision when he gets outside the pocket is extraordinary. I mean, it might be the best in the league. So if you can keep him in the pocket and just make him march it down the field, those big plays that happen on those busted coverages when he gets outside, those are the killers. You can't have that. Keep him in there, and then potentially you can get some secondary pressure on him with some blitzes from A.J. Johnson. Not putting him in coverage is probably a good move, and twisting stunts with the defensive line up the middle, and to get that pressure there to that area where he climbs the pocket, finds that secondary space in the pocket, and then you kind of flood to that area. So that's something I'm looking to do as well. We really got to be, it kind of sucks, but Von Miller, your job this week is not let him get outside. If you can kind of bear down on him and then he kind of runs into you, that's great. But if you're playing super undisciplined in those lanes, he can slide through those, and that's when the big plays happen. You can't have that against them. Unfortunately for the Broncos, Tyreek Hill is back. He looked almost 100% against the Texans last week, and because of that, your zone defense is going to be somewhat limited. It's really hard to play zone defense against Tyreek Hill. He's a zone breaker. So probably a little bit more man this week, and with the Chiefs using 11 personnel at one of the higher rates in the league, I believe it was over 60%, there's going to be a little bit of concern there with the depth. Obviously, both Harrises on the outside. The younger Harris, not Chris Harris, played well last week, but this is a different beast this week against this Chiefs pass offense, so we'll see there. Hopefully Duke Dawson will be back and healthy and good to go. It sounds like he will, but that's going to be big against this 11 personnel. And like I said, as painful as it sounds, it's okay to be conservative a bit against the Chiefs. And if they can march it down the field and kill you that way, 20-play drive or 12-play drive, something more like that, then you know what? It happens. But the one thing you cannot do is let them get like a 50-yard touchdown pass to Tyreek Hill and flip the game quickly. They have to earn it. It has to feel like pulling out fingernails for them to earn anything on the field, because those big plays is where they live. And if you let them do that, you're going to be in trouble. That can flip the game quickly. Another big thing, the Broncos have been doing a really good job these last 2 weeks, but force these 3rd and longs. These ones where Patrick Mahomes, he is what's the word here? He's a little bit of a greedy player from time to time, which is fine. The young players tend to do that, especially ones with big arm talents and stuff like he can. But he will hold on to the ball, looking to make a bigger play, looking to escape. And your best chance to make him pay for that is if it is 3rd and long. Because if it's 3rd and 1, they can do the play actions, they can do a bunch of different things and keep that offense moving. The playbook is open, so to speak. So keep doing great on 1st and 2nd down and open field tackling. The screen game, Mariota couldn't hit it last week. You bet damn sure Mahomes will hit it this week. So open field tackling, keep getting 3rd and longs, stop the run. And again, 11 personnel, it's a totally different beast than what we saw with the Titans this week. So Broncos secondary not really tested last week. That's partially because of the quarterback, partially how they call the offense. But this week that secondary is going to be tested. It'll be interesting to see. And man, good luck to him. Mahomes may be injured, and Watkins might not be playing. That offensive line is still not great, but this is still a really good team coming in, so they're going to need to go their way. And honestly, like I wrote about my article last week, I think the biggest way to beat the Chiefs' offense is with your own offense. So I guess I'll kick it off to you then, Carl, because that's your forte this week.
Well, before I go into mine, I have a trivia question for you.
Oh, great. School. No, I'm just kidding.
Who did Brett Favre complete his very first pass to?
Probably the other team. Did he throw a pick?
No, he threw it to himself.
Oh, himself.
Yeah,
okay.
It got tipped and he caught it, and ended up being a play for a 7-yard loss. And he went over to the sideline and his coach was like, "What the heck are you thinking?" He's like, "I thought I was going to score." And I feel like Mahomes is that way on a lot of times, where you can actually frustrate him if you take away those deep shots all the time. If you make him have to beat you with the quick passes, the low ball or whatever you want to call it, or a short game, and instead of getting out the driver every time, he can get frustrated and he can force some throws that he probably shouldn't. I mean, there's so many plays. I say this sometimes where I think he is one of the more lucky quarterbacks out there, where somehow his receiver comes down with the football. They could be in triple coverage and somehow his receiver comes down with it when it should have been an interception or at least a knockdown. And so, yeah, I do think sometimes playing that conservative game can frustrate him, especially if you can keep him in the pocket and make him a little bit nervous, especially with that ankle where he can't step into his throws as much as he has in the past. I mean, he still has the arm to get it anywhere on the field, even with a bad ankle, but it's not as accurate. I mean, it was easy to see that against the Texans when that ankle really got hurt. His accuracy just went out the window. And so, yeah, if you can keep him in the pocket, really push up the middle. And I think the Broncos have the type of players up front to really make him uncomfortable, force some really bad throws, maybe get a couple of those big turnovers that can really turn this game for the Broncos. You're going to have to give up some points. It's going to happen. I mean, Broncos are not going to shut out the Chiefs, but there's going to be an opportunity for some big plays. And the Broncos have to take advantage of those. They can't drop these interceptions. But now switching to the other side of the ball here. Really, I mean, you can sum up this game plan in one sentence. Run the dang ball. And, I mean, the last few teams, I think the last 2 games, they've averaged giving up 186 yards on the ground. And it's not that teams have actually gotten huge, like, yards per carry all the time, but they're consistently getting into 3rd and shorts and picking up first downs, getting some push, wearing out this Chiefs team. I mean, the last 2 teams have had the defense on the field. The Texans had the Chiefs defense on the field for 40 of the 60 minutes. And the game before that, the Colts had them on the field for 37 of the 60 minutes. And so then you throw in that they're on a short week, coming to altitude. So all of that just sets up perfect for what the Broncos want to do, which is get the ball into Freeman and Lindsey's hand. I mean, I don't think you can hand it off enough to these two in this game. And, I mean, just shorten this game, keep it close, be able to play some play action off of the run, and just kind of keep them guessing there a little bit. And when they start crowding the line of scrimmage, that's when you hit them deep with Sutton or Sanders, or maybe if he turns around, Fant. But this is one of those games that you're going to have some great opportunities, especially since it doesn't sound like Chris Jones is probably going to be ready to go. He's still week to week. I doubt, even if he does play, I think he'd probably be a little bit of a shell of himself. And so that defensive line's not great. The linebackers are not great. Secondary, very much struggling right now. There's every single level. This defense is not great. And so this is a game that the Broncos should be able to get things right. Like I said earlier in the podcast, they've played a lot of great defenses. This is not one of them. This is where they can finally have some room to run. Really, Lindsey should be able to take over this game, maybe get a couple of those really long runs that set the Broncos up well. And then the other big thing is they just have to finish off drives. I mean, we've said it on this podcast before of you can't take 3, especially against the Chiefs. You can take 3 against the Titans and feel okay about it. You can't take 3 against the Chiefs and feel good that you're going to continue to win this game. You're going to have to score some touchdowns. So again, they're going to have to get some creative moments going, maybe some jet sweeps mix in this time. They haven't really, they've faked it. They haven't actually used it. And so I think this is the game where maybe you use that and just really keep the Chiefs on their heels of what you're going to be doing at them. But mostly, again, just continue to run up the middle. I mean, that's where the strength of this Broncos team is at. Run behind behind Dalton. I mean, the guy just moves people. I mean, you can pick up about 4 or 5 yards just running behind him almost every single time. And so this is a get right game for this offense. There's going to be opportunities for big plays in both the run and pass game. And again, with this team just gashed the last couple of weeks, they're not only gashed, but they're gassed. And so this is one of those games where you don't have to get too creative, but at least keep them guessing a little bit. But beyond that, again, just run a lot of those inside zone, outside zone plays and let your running backs go eat.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good game plan. Really, I don't know if I shared it with you, but do you remember it was the 2013 season, Broncos offense, record-setting season, and looked like they were going to cruise their way into the number 1 seed in the AFC West, and then the Chargers came to town, and they scared the Broncos. I mean, there's no other way to put it. They came in, they punched him in the mouth. I think Phillip Rivers only had like 20 pass attempts, but they ran the ball and they just kept running it, and it kept the Broncos offense, despite their, I think it was 10-0 lead in the first quarter, on the sideline, and it pretty much took the soul out of that team. The offense could never get in rhythm, pass game especially, there's so much rhythm involved in that, and it neutered them. So that's the game plan, folks, and we saw with the Colts last week. I think you have to run the ball, run it often, run it effective, even if they're, gearing up to really tear you down there. I think you got to continue, keep hitting the rock, and hopefully that 100th time you break it. So I think that's the best way to beat them, is to keep that offense on the sideline. The way to do that is to dominate the point of attack on the offense, run the ball effectively, and protect the football, but play keep away essentially with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid's offense.
Right. Well, and the other big thing is the Broncos have struggled on third down the last few weeks.
Yeah.
And they've been getting behind the 8 ball a lot of times. And so this is one of those weeks you can't do that. The Chiefs, one thing that they actually do pretty well is when they get those pass rushing opportunities, they like to blitz. And they've blitzed pretty effectively this year. And so you can't give them those kind of opportunities. If you're 3rd and 2, those pass rushes or those blitzes, they can't get there in time if you're going to hit those quick passes. And where this pass game against the Titans, when they're 3rd and 7, I mean, the blitz is coming and it gets out right, but you're picking up 6 when you need 7. And so you can't have those 3rd and long situations against this Chiefs defense. That is one thing that they can actually do pretty well. But again, that's where the run game comes in. Be okay picking up that 4 yards per carry and just get that 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2, quick pass. Every once in a while, throw in the play action, and boom, you got a real shot to keep this game close and just maybe have a break go your way and find a way to win this game.
I like it. All right, folks, one more break. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. I am Nick Kendell along with Carl Dumler. Carl, like we said, the betting line for this game, it started at 4.5. It's 3.5 now, but it's trending towards the Chiefs. And the over-under is 49. I guess I'll just ask you now. Where are you feeling on that? 39 last week, way under. Now it's 49.
I would still want to take the under in this one. I mean, Chiefs haven't looked great on offense by any means the last couple of weeks. And the Broncos, I mean, I think that they can score some more points against the Chiefs, obviously, but I still think that they're going to not put up this big 30-point, 35-point kind of game. And so really, I feel like the better bet right now is the under, with the Chiefs hobbled and Broncos very inconsistent on offense.
Yeah, I think I agree with you as well, and I think it comes back to trying to take the air out of the ball. This is going to be, Broncos are going to try to make this aerial assault into a rock fight, and if they can make the Chiefs play their game, which they have the advantage at home, short week, that's the way it's done. It's kind of, I don't want to be too Big Ten related here, but it's kind of like Michigan State, who got destroyed this week against the Badgers, but typically under Mark D'Antonio, every week, I don't know how they do it, but they make these teams play their game. They get it to become phone booth football, and when it's a rock fight, you can bring them down to your level. You've been there before. You know how to scrum in that way. And I think that's the Broncos' best chance this week. So I think the under there, I'd probably take the under as well at 49. However, who the heck knows? Football, I mean, that's why you got to play the game. It could turn out to be a game where the Broncos offense finally comes out and they kind of turn into a shootout. So we'll see, but I think it's going to be a rock fight. So, Carl, I kick it off to you now, some of these superlatives. The Broncos win if
Joe Flacco doesn't turn the ball over.
Oh,
he hasn't done it for, 5 weeks now? He's thrown an interception or fumbled in the last 5 weeks. And it just seems like the team is getting right on track, and then a turnover happens. And so this is one of those games. This is what the Chiefs defense feeds on. They live on turnovers. They can't stop anybody from running on them or passing on them, but they can force some turnovers. And so they have to play a very clean game. I mean, even a hobbled Mahomes and a banged up offensive line, banged up defense, everything, this is still a very tough team to beat. I mean, this is still a very, very strong team. I mean, I would say the Texans are a top 10 team, and they still almost lost that game to the Chiefs. Now, I think the Texans should have won by a lot more. They had 3 drop touchdowns by Will Fuller and a couple other bad plays that just kind of went against them. But even there, the Chiefs still find a way to always stay in games. And so this is where Joe Flacco, it's not only that he has to play a good game, it's that he has to play a clean game.
All right. Well, for me, I think it's going to come down to the running backs. I think if the running backs finish with over 175 total yards, I think this is a win. I know that seems like a big number, but with how much they're utilizing the running backs in the pass game, coupled with the run game, I mean, they had, what was it this week? 103 rushing yards against the Titans and 270 total yards. I think they need to come get 175 from these running back duos. Freeman's showing out to be a pretty good receiver. I mean, obviously Lindsey's a guy that needs to get touches, targets. He had a bad drop this week. There's some questions about his ability as a receiver just yet, but really I think those two are the key. And 175 yards, that just seems like the over-under line. So I think if they get 175 or better, this is a game the Broncos very much have a chance to win. So the Broncos lose if?
I think they lose if Travis Kelce has over 100 yards receiving. I mean,
okay.
that's always going to be one of their toughest matchups. And Kelce has just been Kelce. He's a great tight end, gets open, just an athletic freak. But this is one of those games where you're going to have to really lean on Justin Simmons, Kareem Jackson to take this guy out, to shut him down, and trust that they're going to win some of those one-on-one battles, because they're going to have to play that man coverage. And so I do think that he's going to get his yards a little bit, but if they can hold him under 100, I just feel like this is a game where they can really put some pressure on Mahomes and make some plays. But if Travis Kelce goes out there and destroys them, I just can't see them winning this game.
That's a good one. I think I will go with passing plays over 30 yards. They can't give up more than 2. If they give up more than 2, you're done, folks. Chunk yards for the Chiefs. I mean, with how much the Broncos offense depends on field position. If they have, even 2 puts me in question, but if you have over 2, it's over. I mean, I can't see this Broncos offense doing enough to be that either giving up points like that and getting behind or needing to march 70, 80 plus yards down the field and scoring. So they just can't give up the big plays, and that's going to come down to tackling. But, I mean, Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, Travis Kelce, it's not an easy task. Honestly, your best chance might be to get after the passer and hoping that the pass rush gets there before you have to cover too long. So we'll see. The Broncos MVP, if they win, will be...
I'll go Malik Reed.
Malik Reed.
He has a much easier matchup this week than last week. I mean, this is a game where I think he's going to have to take over because Von Miller's going to have actually a tough matchup here. I will say probably the one offensive tackle that Von Miller has struggled against is Mitchell Schwartz. And so then on the other side, Cameron Irving has been terrible this year, and he's banged up. I think Malik Reed is one of those guys that could go out there, have a 2-sack game, maybe that big strip sack for a fumble, that could be that big turning point of the game. I just think this game sets up so well for him to really introduce himself to the NFL and have people talking about him for a while.
Yeah, that's a good one. My MVP will be Phillip Lindsay. It's kind of the easy one here. He'd probably be the odds-on favorite, but this is a game where if you're trying to win, folks, I feel like you need to just give the ball to Lindsay, and that might not be the best for his longevity of his career, but it just seems obvious. Pass game, running between the tackles. The Chiefs are weak. The Chiefs are soft up the middle. Hit them. Keep hitting them. Hit them again. When you think they've had enough, hit them 2 more times. So I think that's Phillip Lindsay. It's kind of a weird juxtaposition between Royce Freeman not being the better between the tackles runner, being the better receiver, and Phillip Lindsay being the better between the tackles runner, not the better receiver. But I think this game just sets up where they're going to lean on Lindsay, let this offensive line, do what they've done best last year and this year as well, which is open up run holes and, keep the Chiefs offense off the field. So I think Phillip Lindsay, if he is successful in this game, Broncos got a real chance to win it. But you can bet that the Chiefs are going to be game planning to make sure that they make the Broncos pass game beat them, because outside of Cortland Sutton, it's not been super pretty in that regard. So the GOAT, if they lose, will be...
I'll go Garett Bolles. I just think if anybody has a tough matchup this week, it is him. I talked about it earlier, Frank Clark. He hasn't done a lot this year, but he's been getting a lot of focus too. And so I think that there's going to be times where Dalton Risner is going to have to be one-on-one and win that matchup, not only in the run game, but in the pass game. And I mean, he's been known to give up that really bad sack, that one where forces that big forced fumble that the Broncos have had problems with this year. So if the Broncos have a bad game, especially on offense, I can see Garett Bolles being on our stock down next week.
I'm going to go with Duke Dawson. I think he's played pretty well, kind of that nickel role. We didn't play this last week, but, as the foot injury right now, I'm between him and Devonta Harris, but with how much 11 personnel the Chiefs make, if the Chiefs are to win this game, they're going to get some big pass plays, and I think it's probably coming from against Duke Dawson or Devonta Harris, so I'm going to go with them as the two. They have me concerned, obviously. Obviously Dawson's flashed a bit. Devonta Harris was really good against the Titans, but this is a totally different animal, so I'm going to hedge my bets there. I think those are the two that, if the Chiefs come out here and blast it open, probably fall on one of those two shoulders. And then the unsung hero of the Broncos win will be
my doppelganger, Andy Janovich.
You jerk.
Is that who you were going to go with? Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
It's kind of an easy choice just because he's kind of a player that doesn't always get the attention that he deserves.
Yeah.
And especially in the run game where that's going to be a huge focus. He's probably going to get the most snaps he's had all season unless the Broncos come out and are losing by 14 right off the bat. But if the Broncos are in this game, Andy Janovich is going to get a lot of run, and he's that guy that just can really the big plays in the run game, it seems like, are right behind Andy Janovich. And so I could see that where Phillip Lindsay gets one of those big 70-yard runs, Andy Janovich takes on the linebacker and gets that key block that really gets the big play for the Broncos.
I was definitely going to go Janovich for that reason, just because how much they're going to depend on the running game. But I'm going to go with... Man, Carl, I'm going to go with Deshaun Hamilton. he's a guy that the Broncos have been struggling on third down, and Sanders is dinged up right now. Limited, did not participate. One of the two today in practice. Hamilton, not a super electric guy after the catch or down the field, but he's been doing a pretty good job coming off one of his best games this past week. But one area that's really been impressive when I've gone back and watched the games is his blocking. Sutton and him both do a good job getting after it at blocking, and it really creates those second, third level opportunities to bust big runs for those running backs. So with how much the Broncos offense has been struggling on third down, the Chiefs, they're already dealing with some injuries in that secondary, specifically at cornerback, not a great cornerback group. I think Hamilton has a chance to be a really unsung hero in that regard, because I think he's, especially with Fant coming off that arguable, was it Fant, was it Flacco thing? Yeah, I think Hamilton is a guy that could be utilized a little bit more this week. Hopefully we'll convert some third downs the Broncos have been horrible at so far. And that run blocking, that can be the difference between a 10-yard run and an 80-yard run to the house. So Hamilton's a guy, unsung hero in that regard. And how he plays, specifically as a blocker, which as a wide receiver, goes underappreciated, can be a big thing for the Broncos this week. So, Carl, your prediction.
All right. Well, I'm going to keep this train going. I've picked the Broncos the last 2 weeks to win, and I'm 2-0 in October with them picking. So I'm going to have Broncos winning this one 25-24. And this come down to a last-second McManus field goal. Broncos finally get one on the other side, where they are the ones coming out with victory on the last-second field goal. What do you got?
I have the Broncos losing 23-24. And almost on the other end of it, a last-second field goal to lose. I think that Patrick Mahomes is going to pull a rabbit out of his you-know-what last drive of the game, get the Chiefs in scoring position, and hit a field goal to lose it. So the Broncos cover the spread, but end up losing this game in a close one that will give a lot of hope for how this team can do in the future, but also let them know that they're not quite there just yet. So that's going to wrap up today's episode of Building the Broncos, powered by Overtime Media. You can find Carl on Twitter, at Carl Dumler MHH, and myself, at Kendell MHH. Make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow us on Twitter, at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you soon. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.